There are countless misconceptions when it comes to addiction, from how it starts, the struggle, and how it affects others. Tonight, Fox 26 brings you Crisis in the Central Valley, sponsored by Donald P. Dick and Sierra Meadows. Moderating tonight's broadcast from Fox 26 News, Marie Edinger.
Frankie DePrimo was 20 years old. He was a huge jokester. He loved Mustangs. He loved his girlfriend and his family.
Wave! He was a great kid. He was caring. Everybody wanted him around. He was always the life of the party.
He died on a Friday, fentanyl overdose.
We're talking about him now in the past tense. What's that like?
It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with. Frankie will be gone 2 years, April 17th. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't cry. And some days are worse than others. As time goes by, I feel it gets worse because it's reality. And you know they're never coming back.
Frankie wasn't an addict. He, like many others his age, used drugs occasionally. He and his girlfriend had gotten into a fight, and he asked a drug dealer for Xanax. The family's Ring camera caught the dealer dropping them off at the house that night. His mom had no idea.
I went to his door, and I tried to open it, and it was locked, and I went and got the key. And then I came back, and I opened it, and I could tell he'd been dead for a long time.
He'd spent the night playing Xbox. His mom found him the next day, with his headphones still on.
When I opened up that bedroom door, it changed my life forever.
A toxicology report showed the pill Frankie took was mostly Unisom, aspirin, and fentanyl. His mom checked his room and found the baggie his dealer gave him. The pills crumbled when she picked them up. Clearly pressed pills, not real pharmaceuticals.
The Xanax pill that Frankie thought he was taking, he had 6 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system.
The drug dealer who sold them was arrested, but got a slap on the wrist.
There needs to be harsher penalties for drug dealers selling fentanyl because it's killing. And some days I feel like I'm just a zombie. I'm just here, you know. Because the hole I have in my heart, it hurts.
Frankie's mom kept his car and drives it around sometimes. She kept his room pretty much as it was, memorabilia still up, love notes she'd written him still on his mirror.
There's a lot of things that you hold on to because it's a part of you. And I felt like I would lose him, but you know what? I know now I'll never lose him because he's always here with me.
Now, Elaine Hudson is on a mission.
The more people that I can make aware of this deadly drug called fentanyl, the more lives I will save. If I can prevent another parent of going through what I'm going through, I'm making a difference.
She's planning to set up a memorial for Frankie at Willow Gardens Nursery, where she'll keep a supply of Narcan and drug test strips available to the public.
These kids, whether we like it or not, they're going to do it. And if they could test their drugs before, you know, maybe it will save their life.
Elaine Hudson, the mother you just heard from, is one of the people featured in the Don't Hide the Scars Project documentary, which you'll see later in this special. The creator of that documentary is the organization PAIN, Parents in Addict in Need, and I have the head of that organization with me now, Flindt Anderson. Also in the documentary, you'll see Fresno County District Attorney Lisa Smittcamp, who is sitting with us today too. Flindt, I want to start with you. What made you guys want to start up this documentary?
Well, I think the first thing was we were not getting the message out enough about the fentanyl crisis. And by doing this, we wanted to show the reality of what is going on in Fresno, the reality of our law enforcement and what they're doing, the reality of what parents are going through, and the reality of what kids are actually doing today. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing, yeah.
The first thing. Yeah. Lisa, he brought up the law enforcement aspect of that. What was your view when he first reached out asking if you'd be part of this?
So I think, the way that the laws have, especially over the last 5 years, we have really decriminalized a lot of laws in California. Nothing that I'm in favor of, obviously, but the voters and the legislature up in Sacramento have really tied the hands of law enforcement, starting with Prop 47 and all of the subsequent laws that have followed, which have really not only just decriminalized drugs, drug use, drug sales, drug trafficking, but they've encouraged people to use drugs. And so we in law enforcement have really had to try to sort of switch gears and take on an education and awareness campaign in addition to working with our federal partners to try to combat some of this stuff.
How has fentanyl changed things for you?
Fentanyl is like nothing that anyone in law enforcement has ever seen because it's an instant killer. Most of the other substance abuse issues that we see, they take a longer time. They take a good amount of time to see people go from the phases of using, abusing, and then addiction. But fentanyl is a silent and immediate killer. So it is, something that we are all just grappling with to try to figure out how to combat it and save kids.
Mm-hmm. And Flindt, you do a lot of work in trying to help people recover. Have you seen any change now that fentanyl is coming more and more into play in people's lives?
Well, first off, the amount of people coming into treatment is greater because of fentanyl. And with that, a lot of places are actually running out of room in order to get these clients in. Fentanyl has just risen the bar a thousandfold in what we in treatment are doing and what we in the advocacy part of this is trying to do. It makes it extremely tough to talk to parents about a child and using fentanyl because most parents don't think that their kids are even going to do this. But the point I want to make is that experimentation today is not the experimentation of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s. You experiment with drugs today, it can and it will kill you. Because almost everything is laced with fentanyl today as well, including cocaine, including marijuana, including Xanax, and fake pain pills. So if you're experimenting, you're literally playing Russian roulette.
You brought up something just a moment ago that I do want to get a little bit more into, which is who this can affect. And we just saw in Elaine Hudson's interview talking about how her young son was killed by fentanyl. One of the things we're trying to overcome in this special, and also that Pain is working so hard on, is the stigma behind addiction, that this can really impact everyone. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It does, but I would like to say that addiction doesn't define a person. I think that's very important to let everybody know. It is not the drug addict that everybody pictures any longer. And Lisa said something a few minutes ago that's very important. It starts with dependency and then abuse and then can wind up in addiction. But the stigma behind it, these are normal people that are living pretty much normal lives. And so that stigma of somebody being a drug addict is just not fair anymore, I guess, if that's the right way to put it. I mean, do I look like a drug addict? I don't think so. But I'm a recovering drug addict. I had a 20 to 23-year addiction to opiates. And somehow the last 21 years I've managed to stay clean and sober. But so that stigma, we have to get past that stigma. That we are not evil people. We are not criminals because we started taking drugs. I think that wall has to be broken through, and that's what we're trying so hard at Pain to try to get across to Fresno and Clovis and the rest of the valley.
We also know that addiction can drive people to do things that they wouldn't normally, and I'm sure that's something that you must see all the time, Lisa.
Yeah, and I think that's, what Flindt is saying is so true, because the earlier you deal with your child, your husband, your wife, your neighbor, your friend, whoever it is in your circle that has an addiction problem, the higher the likelihood is of them recovering and getting into recovery. Because when you see them go from those phases of abuse to addiction, they lose control and they lose control of their morals, their values. And then what happens is you get into committing other crimes sometimes. And then, that addict becomes the burglar, that addict becomes the robber, or the person who commits, a gun crime to supply intensify the habit, and then this whole just cycle begins.
Another stigma to overcome is how people can finally quit, how they can seek help, and that's actually something that I talked about with the Fresno County Interim Public Health Officer, Dr. Reyes Fora. He was explaining that addiction actually changes your brain chemistry so that it isn't so much a choice. You can't wake up one day and just decide to quit. Doing so can be deadly, and it is not effective. You can relapse that way. So I want to check in with Dr. Fora just to talk a little bit more about that neurochemistry, what goes on in the brain, why addiction is not specifically a person's choice, what it takes to overcome, and some of the options available now to help with that.
In 2021, the CDC says more than 100,000 people in the U.S. died from overdose. 3/4 of those deaths were from opioids. That's 207 opioid overdose deaths in our country every day. Using drugs gives people big surges of chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. Over time, it takes more and more drugs just to feel normal. The changes drug users are going through aren't choices. They have a brain disease.
You mentioned that there are hits to the brain. There's damage that's done to the brain. So what specifically is that damage?
The more we put ourselves into this situation where the brain is exposed to chemicals and having to equilibrate over and over again, the more that brain is going to change. And then at the neurochemical level, it may actually stop making the same number of receptors for something like dopamine or opioids. And so your actual brain chemistry changes over time. And over many months to years, an addict's brain may look a lot different than a normal person's brain. And that's okay. That's something that we expect. That's something that we can work with. And that's something that is not a life sentence.
Because of those changes in the brain, quitting cold turkey can be life-threatening. People going through withdrawal feel like they have the flu and their bones start to ache. People experience gastrointestinal problems like diarrhea and vomiting, causing dehydration. In some cases, their hearts race to unhealthy levels.
What I tell my residents and my doctors is by the time someone is in opioid withdrawal, we should really think of that person as someone who's actively seizing. You don't try to reason with someone that's actively seizing. You shouldn't really tell them, you know what, I'm sorry, you need to go down the street to a neurology clinic because we can't treat active seizures here. You should just treat the seizure. That's an emergency. The same thing with opioid withdrawal.
The good news is there have been amazing advancements in addiction treatment. In the past, people would have to go to methadone clinics every single day to get medication that would help them stave off withdrawal symptoms and cravings. Now, there's a program that lets you get a prescription for a daily pill that will do the same thing for $1 a day.
You know, what's amazing is that the medication that we use with our Bridge program called buprenorphine or Suboxone literally works within 5 to 10 minutes.
And in Fresno, you can get it right in the ER.
You actually wrote the grant for the Bridge program.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
It really is that going back to just, reshape that brain that's been damaged, that's been neglected, that's been judged and stigmatized, and really saying, you know what? Let's stop that vicious cycle. Let's actually give you a medication that's going to start healing your brain, and let's try to have an empathic, compassionate approach to a human being with a real human being's problem.
The treatment goes beyond the medication, too. Stephanie Garcia is a substance use navigator for the Bridge program.
So I'll meet a patient in the ED, talk to the patient directly, ask them questions about their history of use, and then I'll ask them, what type of treatment do you want to go into? And I'm more of a vessel and helping that person start the treatment.
Do you guys help with transportation at all?
We do, here and there. We go based off of insurance. There's also programs and grants that could help pay for their medication and their treatment. As long as they let us know, we'll try to figure out a way to get them into some sort of treatment.
There are several different treatments involved in addiction recovery. Some people go to behavioral therapy, some go to inpatient recovery centers. Most people will need medication at some point.
Whatever treatment the patient is ready to go into, we just provide education, support, and just meet the patient where they're at and help them get connected to that treatment plan.
The medication used in the Bridge program isn't just about staving off withdrawal, it also protects against overdose. You've probably heard of Narcan. That's the brand name for naloxone. It's a life-saving drug administered during an overdose. And there's a drug fewer people have heard of, which Dr. Fora mentioned earlier, Suboxone.
Suboxone is basically something that lasts for about 12 to 24 hours, and so it's a once-a-day medication. And while it's in your system, you cannot overdose from other opioids. While it's in your system, you do not feel cravings or withdrawal.
The problem is the Bridge program is only for opioids, things like oxycodone, morphine, fentanyl, and heroin. So far, there's nothing like it for methamphetamine, another big problem in the Valley.
People are actively trying to search for that. We just haven't gotten it yet. And so we just have, other less effective remedies, but we need to talk to those folks. Methamphetamine is arguably an even larger problem than opioids in our community and across California and the US. And unfortunately, we don't have those great medications yet, but we know that, it's going to be the same approach. Meet people where they are, be compassionate, be empathetic, understand that they've had a very hard life.
I went through therapist after therapist, but I always felt like I was one step away from a crisis. Going to the hospital didn't feel right either. For me, I had to go somewhere and get away, and I had to go somewhere that specialized in mental health to get treatment. Sierra Meadows was the only place where I felt like I could live my life and still get the treatment I needed.
Find Sierra Meadows Behavioral Health online or call our intake line 24/7 at 559-326-7775.
Before you buy a used vehicle, checking the brake fluid, cooling fan, brake pads, battery, wheel alignment, software updates might not be on your list, but it's on our list of 172 inspection points performed by Ford factory-trained technicians on every gold-certified Ford Blue Advantage used vehicle. Plus, get our 14-day or 1,000-mile money-back guarantee to ensure peace of mind when purchasing your vehicle. It's used car buying that's built for you by your Ford dealer. Now get 0.99% financing for 36 months on all Ford Gold-certified vehicles.
Life is non-stop, and I'm always looking for things to make my life just a little easier. That's why I bank with Valley Strong Credit Union. I get all of the benefits of a local credit union, but with the technology of a modern bank, so I can focus on the things that matter. And because they've been serving the Valley for over 80 years, I know they can help us build for the future. Valley Strong. Grow your possibilities.
Looking for a deal? Every single day of the week, Daily Deals in Clovis and now in Fresno has thousands of closeouts, overstock, and like new items with new inventory every week. Close Thursdays for restocking. We open our doors with Daily Deals with everything priced at $9 on Friday, $7 on Saturday, $5 on Sunday, $3 on Monday, $1 on Tuesday, and Wednesday just 25 cents store-wide. Daily Deals. Discounts every day. Daily Deals on Shaw near Harbor Freight in Clovis, and now on Shaw west of Marks in Fresno.
We also talked with Dr. Vora about the different treatment options available for different types of addiction. And one of the problems he mentioned was that there are all these options available for opioid addiction, but when it comes to other things, for instance, addiction to meth, there's really nothing available, and how your recovery is going to go will depend on what's available to you. So I did also talk with Jason LaChance, who is in recovery from an alcohol addiction. That is, again, a lifelong process, and he talked about what he recommends people go through, the treatment options available, and what his experience has been.
Jason LaChance is a recovering alcoholic. These days, he spends his time trying to end the stigma behind addiction and mental health issues. He speaks at schools and is the host of a podcast called Knocking Doors Down. But it was quite a journey to get there.
What are those first few days or weeks like after you decide to stop?
Scary. It's scary. If someone is not an addict, they don't understand how much the mind has taken over to want to use. I wore a mask for a lot of people. Addicts, we do. We lie, understand that. It's just a reality, because guess what? We're lying to ourselves, especially that we don't have a problem. So when you start to really strip away this thing that you thought was such a huge part of your identity, you go through a bit of almost like a midlife crisis.
LaChance viewed himself as the life of the party, and at the time, alcohol felt like it was part of his personality. It was also the source of a lot of pain in his life.
So many people, it's because there's underlying traumas. There's a lot of misperception of, this is the gateway drug, that is the gateway drug. Research, it's showing 100% trauma is the gateway drug. And that means something different to everybody.
Just like with other addictions, quitting cold turkey can be extremely dangerous. There are medications to help. Acamprosate can reduce the desire to drink alcohol, but doesn't prevent withdrawal. Some doctors prescribe beta blockers and anticonvulsants during detox, along with antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds.
What does withdrawal look like for alcoholism?
For me, it's a lot of the DTs, shakes for about a week and things like that as my brain chemistry started to reset. Depression hits a lot of these things.
The American Society of Addiction Medicine has 4 categories for alcohol treatment. Outpatient, which includes regular office visits for counseling or medication support. Intensive outpatient or partial hospitalization. Residential, also called inpatient, and intensive inpatient, which could be necessary for people going through withdrawal. The 2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health found nearly 15 million people over the age of 12 had alcohol use disorder, but only about half of them got help.
You brought up empathy and grace. How would you encourage people to talk to others who might be struggling with addiction? I think that can be hard to take on, especially at first. How to start that conversation? What would you advise?
I think the hardest part, especially if you are not someone that's gone through recovery, is to understand that the person that you love that is struggling with this, that this disease has taken them over. It has become their identity. You'll hear it a lot, I'm sure, of I want my son back, I want my husband back, I want my daughter back, you know? And that reality is this substance has taken them away from you. But if they want it and you're there to support it, guess what? They can come back and they're going to be something more beautiful than you remember before.
Imagine yourself in a new Toyota.
Save big at the pump with Toyota's industry-leading selection of 10 fuel-efficient hybrids.
Ready, set, go get your Toyota today.
Toyota, let's go places.
The best burger in the Valley has to be Triangle Burgers, and you can taste the difference with 4 locations in Fresno and Seanville and Clovis, and in Tulare on Tulare Avenue off 99. Triangle Burger Retro Diner, always good times and a better burger.
Maybe you're thinking about selling your vehicle, but you don't want to go through the hassle of going into a dealership, going through all the steps on what a vehicle's worth. At Fresno Lexus, you can get a firm offer on your vehicle starting right in the comfort of your own home. It's called Express Trade. It's easy. All you have to do is take a few photos of your vehicle, add some basic information, and our friendly agents will reach out to you right away with a firm offer. So start the process right now at FresnoLexus.com. All we ask is that you try us first.
Get back in the saddle this spring at Rubber Soul. From specialized spikes for every type of cyclist to clothes and accessories, shop the largest selection of specialized inventory in the Valley, in person or online at rubbersoulbicycles.com.
Imagine yourself in a new Toyota.
Nice.
Solid imagination.
Get low financing on the all-new redesigned Tundra or conquer the toughest terrains with Tacoma.
Ready, set, go get your Toyota today.
Toyota, let's go places.
What else would each of you want people to come out of this documentary thinking, feeling, and understanding?
The first thing would be that this could happen to them. No one is immune from this. It no longer matters where you live, what part of town you live in. It no longer matters what the parents do for a living. It no longer matters if your son or daughter is that first chair violin player, is the starting quarterback, is the straight A student. That is the biggest misnomer, I believe, in this community and the rest of the communities around the country, is that my child would never do this. And of course, the second thing that comes out, that people will take heed to what we are telling them, that they will start to get in their kids' business because they have to at this point. Because the last thing these people that are watching this want to wind up in is losing that child like Elaine did. We deal with life and death every day at the Pain Organization. And I'm here to tell you that there is no greater loss for a mom and dad and the rest of the family than to lose a loved one to addiction. Lane said it all. So I hope that people will watch this, call us if they have any questions, we will answer our phones. We will help you any way we can. We've done it for almost 15 years, and we will continue to do it as long as I have breath, because I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
Any final thoughts, Lisa?
Yeah, I think for me, you know, from a law enforcement perspective and being a mother of 2 teenagers, I agree 100% with what Flindt said. It could be anybody's kid any day, any school, any race, any area of town, any area of the United States of America. It's everywhere. And I think, you know, for me, interacting with a lot of people that are in addictive recoveries and the health department and the Department of Behavioral Health, we all sort of have our own roles. And what we've taken on in law enforcement is sort of the don't use, right? Don't start this. Because by the time you get to Flindt at Payne, or by the time you get to Department of Behavioral Health, you already have an addiction problem. God forbid you time you get to the coroner's office. You know, the problem is too late to fix when someone's dead. So I think we have a big joke in the office of the big 80s thing where, you know, Nancy Reagan said, just say no. And you talk to a lot of people in the recovery world who say, well, that didn't work. And I always say, it worked for me, right? Because I was afraid. I have very close family members who have suffered from addiction. And so I've seen it firsthand, very, very close to me. And I think that is a message that we have lost. It is not the only message. It's not going to work for every kid, but it's going to work for some kids. And that's why we've participated from the law enforcement perspective with people in nonprofits like Payne, and we've gone out, reached out to the schools with the Fresno County Office of Ed and Fresno Unified, Central Unified, Clovis Unified. We've done billboards to try to really stress the dangers and to try to keep the population of kids who haven't experimented yet from doing it. Just a speed bump, just a notice, just some information to arm them with so that they can make an intelligent choice, and hopefully we keep them out of that world of needing recovery.
Thank you each so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys at home for sticking with us. After this, we'll have the full Don't Hide the Scars project.
I went through therapist after therapist, but I always felt like I was one step away from a crisis. Going to the hospital didn't feel right either. For me, I had to go somewhere and get away, and I had to go somewhere that specialized in mental health to get treatment. Sierra Meadows was the only place where I felt like I could live my life and still get the treatment I needed.
Find Sierra Meadows Behavioral Health online or call our intake line 24/7 at 559-326-7775.
Come to Quality Furniture for our big spring sale going on right now. We have this beautiful sofa love seat with 4 power recliners and a high density foam on the cushions, all for $37 a month. We have this beautiful solid wood bedroom set available in queen or king with storage on the footboard with the matching dresser, mirror, and nightstand, all for $37 a month. We have 5 years with no interest and no money down with good credit, bad credit, or no credit. We'll get you approved here at Quality Furniture in our 2 locations in Fresno and Visalia.
Cargill is now hiring in Fresno. At Cargill, everything begins with our purpose to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. We're hiring for general production positions, including entry-level roles, with wages ranging from $16.50 to $25 an hour. Benefits include health insurance, vacation and holiday pay, 401k, and much more. At Cargill, you're empowered to be your best. Apply using the QR code on your screen or at career.cargill.com. Cargill is an equal opportunity employer, including disability and veterans.
The following program is a paid commercial which has been paid for by the advertiser whose products and/or services are featured in this program.
Thanks for watching Crisis in the Central Valley on Fox 26. We continue with Don't Hide the Scars, a project focused on the real faces and real stories behind addiction in an effort to overcome the stigmas surrounding that disease. Sponsored by Donald P. Dick and Sierra Meadows.
The face of addiction has changed. While criminals, drug dealers, drug users, and the homeless continue to roam back alleys or sell themselves on Motel Row surprises no one. A new chapter to the old story is being written with the blood-stained tears from parents of what Koreans call han, a sadness so deep, so horrific, that it burns in one's soul so that tears can no longer fall. The story of the overdosing drug addict no longer takes place miles away. It's no longer in those neighborhoods. It's happening in homes like yours. It's 2 doors down from mom and dad's bedroom, right under your nose. It's the high school quarterback, the smartest student, the most vibrant cheerleader, and the most talented musician. It is someone very much like your daughter or your son that thinks they have everyone fooled. Yes, drugs are still bought in the sleazy parts of town, and yes, your children know exactly where to get them, but times have changed. Now they are bought as parents are having dinner or watching a movie, and you as parents have no idea this is happening. Keeping your kids home used to mean you were keeping them safe. Now the drug that may kill your child is being delivered to your home right in front of you. This story takes place in our community and thousands of other communities, right here, right now.
My name's Melissa DeVoe. I was raised here in Fresno. Spent the last 30 years in San Diego raising my son, Taylor. I was shocked that he overdosed. I just thought, oh, he's too smart for that. Generally speaking, we do everything for our kids to give them a good life. And are we perfect? Was I perfect? No. But this does not discriminate. Good parents, bad parents, absent parents, present parents, rich parents, poor parents. This does not discriminate. This is everywhere.
My son, Jackson Smith, at the age of 22, bought a counterfeit oxy that was laced with fentanyl. He was such a good kid. He was so sweet. Everybody loved him. I don't think he had an enemy in the world. He was just such a nice person, and cared about so many. This pain of losing a child is the greatest pain you can ever experience, I guarantee you. And it's sad when people think that it's not going to happen to their family. I thought that too. I thought it was, it's other people it happens to. Well, it can happen to anybody.
My name's Elaine Hudson. I was born and raised in Fresno. I have 3 children. Well, I do have 3 children. On the morning of April 17th, 2020, I'm an early riser. I was up about 5:30, and I made my coffee, done my morning routine. I'd been going in and out all day long, and I just assumed that Frankie had gotten up and then went back to his room. I came in and I took a shower, and his phone was ringing and ringing and ringing, and I sent him a text message, "Hey, what's up?" No response. Then I got worried.
We lived in Encinitas, my son and I, so we would come to Fresno to see family, but he was an outdoor kid and he loved to skateboard, and this is the skateboard park that he wanted to go to every time we came. I believe it was right at the beginning of his senior year or a little bit before, I get a call from his girlfriend's mom. She said, I need to talk to you. I've got to tell you something that Laura, his girlfriend at the time, told me. She told me that Taylor's been using heroin, and also that he had been molested by a family friend for years. So I got that phone call with both of those things at one time. I almost fell over. The first thing I wanted to do was get him into rehab. Now, finding an appropriate and a good place for a 17-year-old to go that's inpatient, that is not astronomically expensive, is really difficult. I was fortunate enough to find a place in Orange County, and he probably would have been more successful had he stayed longer, but he was there for 30 days. Mom, I'm good, I can leave here now, I'll do fine, I got this, and me, I was still naive at the time, and, wanted my baby back at home, in his own room and bed, still used to me, he was still a child.
Did you approach him about the molestation?
Yeah, he didn't really want to talk about it too much, but he said, yeah, you know, it was true. And, you know, there's a police report. There's still an open police report, but there was no charges against him he wasn't prosecuted.
What does that person do for a living?
He's a graphic artist in the surf and skateboard industry.
So he's around a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Still to this day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was supposed to pick his girlfriend up around 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock came, and I still hadn't seen him. So I went to his door, and it was locked. And I went and got the key. And I opened it up. I could tell he'd been dead for a long time. He was laying on his bed. He still had his headphones on. So when he died, I think he just kind of fell back, and his arms were back. But he was gray. I mean, just... Once the police came, they wouldn't let me back in his room because the Xanax that he took.
Is that what killed him?
A Xanax laced with fentanyl. He had chopped it up and he had snorted it. And it was on his table where his Xbox is at. So so they wouldn't let me, you know, go back in his room. I didn't want to go back there anyway, so I couldn't see my son like that. It was bad enough when I opened the door.
Jackson had gone to a party. The intent was to drink and to play video games. It was about 2:42 in the morning, and I get a phone call from the girl that he was with. He had been dating her for a few months, and she told me that she had called 911 because he wasn't breathing. So we rushed to the hospital and identified myself, and the guard said, well, is that the person they just brought in? And I said, probably so. And the look on his face, it wasn't good. This was bad. I knew it was bad. The girl told me that it was, he did not feel comfortable, so he wanted to leave. They went to In-N-Out Burger, came home, and then she said to me, we were eating in his room, we were on the bed, and all of a sudden, he fell in his plate of food. That's what she kept saying. So she called 911, and then the ambulance came, and they did what they could, and they took him to the hospital. I don't believe that's what might have happened.
In the 7 years that he was alive after I found out that he was using, he spent most of that time either in a sober living or in a rehab. Did really well. You know, to be honest with you, he had way more sober time in that 7 years than he did using time. He wasn't on the streets ever. He wasn't built for that. I knew he had relapsed, so he took a leave of absence from work, and I came and picked him up and brought him back to Fresno with me. He seemed to have a handle on it. He was doing good, you know, but it was a relapse. It was a relapse that ultimately took him out. I thought, there's got to be fentanyl. It has to be fentanyl. There's no way. But it was heroin. How did he get this stuff here? He doesn't live here. You know, none of my family members use those kinds of, nobody he knew. Craigslist. He used Craigslist. The poison that killed him was delivered to my house. They brought it to my apartment when I was sleeping. Poof, just in one night, that one decision. It was too easy.
I went back on my Ring camera to see who came over the night that he died. And there was a couple people that came over that night. They brought him pills.
What I think happened is he took that pill at that party. He passed out in the car. He was ODing. She thought he was asleep. She gets the food, comes to our house, and she cannot get him out of the car because he is passed out. I think she called her friends. They got him out of the car, placed him in his room, concocted the story. The friends leave, and then she calls 911. Narcan would have saved his life, or it could have saved his life, but unfortunately, when the paramedics arrived on scene and they asked her, did he take any drugs, she said no. So she lied, and he didn't get the Narcan that he needed. He was in full cardiac arrest, and he didn't get it.
Narcan is an opioid reversal agent that binds to the opioid receptors. It is the only substance that will bring somebody out of an opioid overdose if you can get to them in time. If you don't get to that person in minutes, the chances of them not making it are extremely high. Narcan has no other properties to it other than that. It brings somebody out of their overdose. It needs to be kept in everyone's household, like an EpiPen or a fire extinguisher. This is a life-saving tool that paramedics carry. If your 3-year-old gets into the bottle and they squirt it up their nose, nothing is going to happen to that child. It has no other properties whatsoever. Even though you may not have a child that's using drugs in your home, what happens if they bring a friend over that is? And you have no idea that this young person that's sitting in your living room is going into overdose.
It's an extra layer of precaution to fight from both sides. So we can tell people, don't abuse drugs, don't ever use them. You can do as many campaigns in high schools and middle schools as you want. People are still going to do it, so you need to have a layer of protection. So you should let them know the resources available to them if they run into problems, whether that's Narcan or if they find themselves being addicted, other resources in their community to help them get out of that.
The inaction of the people that were with Jackson contributed to his death. They were fearful. If they said that he took drugs, then it could implicate them somehow and that they were going to get in trouble with the law. But I can tell you that that's not the way it works.
When somebody overdoses on let's say a pill, a pressed pill or whatever it is, and they need medical attention, there really is no crime. Okay, so once someone has ingested that, the only thing they could potentially be charged with is a misdemeanor possession of fill in the blank, whatever it is, heroin, a prescription that's not yours, fentanyl, whatever, which is quite honestly in California like a traffic ticket. I have never in my tenure as district attorney seen or condoned or allowed a child or an adult who has been in an overdose situation to be charged with possession of whatever drug it is. The issue is that it's got to be the question, if they survive, is how can we prevent them from continuing to be involved in this type of activity, which is dangerous, obviously, to their life and threatening to their life.
I don't think that people realize the effect on their own community. In the news, we try to tell people this is affecting housewives, this is affecting children, this is affecting every single community that you could picture. It isn't people on the streets wandering around who are the only ones addicted. It could be your boss, it could be your friend, your coworker. We try to tell people that, but from a news perspective, people are wary of fear-mongering or looking for clicks. So in this particular instance, as truthful as we can be about it, people take everything with a grain of salt, and so I think that nobody thinks anything could happen to them. There's that barrier. So even when we warn people, we're up against quite a bit in trying to actually convince people of the danger.
People don't have the medical knowledge to understand that the human body reacts differently. Everybody reacts differently to certain drugs. And what happens with addiction is some people can use drug A, whatever it might be, recreationally for their whole lives. And because of the makeup of their body or their situations or their self-control, they may never become addicted to that. But there are other people who simply become addicted the first time they use, whether that's cocaine, whether that's the buzz they feel from an oxy, from a Vicodin, and they're done. You know, they're literally, their lives are altered in that moment. And then there's the average person, which takes some time to go through the cycle, which is use, abuse, and addiction.
With 10 models to choose from, Toyota has more hybrids than any other brand. And no plugs means incredible MPG with no charging downtime. They're the perfect balance of gas and electric power. Toyota, let's go places.
I went through therapist after therapist, but I always felt like I was one step away from a crisis. Going to the hospital didn't feel right either. For me, I had to go somewhere and get away, and I had to go somewhere that specialized in mental health to get treatment. Sierra Meadows was the only place where I felt like I could live my life and still get the treatment I needed.
Find Sierra Meadows Behavioral Health online or call our intake line 24/7 at 559-326-7775.
Life is non-stop, and I'm always looking for things to make my life just a little easier. That's why I bank with Valley Strong Credit Union. I get all of the benefits of a local credit union, but with the technology of a modern bank. At home and on the go. And because they've been serving the Valley for over 80 years, I know they can help us build for the future. Valley Strong. Grow your possibilities.
Imagine yourself in a new Toyota.
Get low financing on RAV4 and the 40 MPG RAV4 Hybrid.
Ready, set, go get your Toyota today.
Toyota, let's go places.
Yeah, I'm an alcoholic addict, and I got sober September 26th of 2013 by the grace of God, and as of recent, I'm currently serving the call as a worship pastor at First Street Church in Fresno. The very first time I'd say I tried drugs was in sophomore year when I attended a kickback with some buddies, and first night of true freedom, and that was my first experience hitting from a bong. That was the start of the perpetual trip down the rabbit hole. And then when college hit, and I had the ability to make choices that weren't necessarily accountable to anyone other than myself. And I didn't know at the time, but to God and to the people who were close in my life. There was a significant jump.
What drugs were you selling at this point?
I was selling pot, any pills, some hallucinogens, gold caps, shrooms, sometimes some acid tabs, and but mainly it was pot and pills. And yeah, I was full-time college student, part-time worker, shift manager.
My name is Kelsey Egason. I've been in recovery since I was 16. So I entered in recovery in 2006. I'm a former athlete, nationally ranked cheerleader and gymnast. I started struggling with depression and anxiety, but at the time I didn't know what it was. You start piling on these bricks, of life, and the pressure was just so much for me, and the depression was causing me to have loss of identity. And when you lose yourself, you lose your self-worth, your self-esteem. You start to question everything. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And those thoughts rolled into, I don't want to be alive, this is too much, and the suicidal thoughts started coming. And I think in order to escape all of those emotions, I ran to drugs. And so at 15, I started smoking pot, and at 16, I started using cocaine.
I was entering my adolescence. Tourette's were getting worse. My suicidal tendencies from a young age were even worse as well, and it was just like a staircase, and it was just stacking and stacking. I was just getting higher, ready to fall. And that's, that fall came at about 16, and that's, where I really entered drug addiction.
When I remember it now, I get really sad. Because to me, Using drugs is self-harm. It's the same as cutting your wrists. It's the same as you don't put something in your body and not know what it's going to do to you and call it self-care. It is self-harm. And when I think about like the first time I did that line, I didn't know when I did that line that that was going to be the start of a decade-long suicide wish. Yeah, it made me feel better. It told me lies, and you're accepted. Who cares what people think? I went from like Kelsey, who like still really cared and had a vision, to like, you never have to fucking worry about anything again because you got me. You have cocaine.
The line to everyone, though it was intoxicating, it was more all I really started to know. And I felt more weight and guilt from that than I did in regards to breaking the law.
My parents were, they had enough, you know, by 18. That's when, but I left on my terms. You know, I knew they had enough, because I wasn't changing. You know, I didn't leave because they had enough, though I left because of me. I was a selfish POS, you know.
I remember using, like, I would pray, and I'd be like, God, like, please forgive me. Like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this to myself, but, you know, I would tell him, like, I don't know what to do with all my pain and all my experiences, and you're using these drugs and you're just so out of your mind and you're so high and you don't even really have like a real thought. You know, everything you think is so driven by this drug, and you know, there were times it gave me courage to face my fears and my pain, and I would say, okay, now I'm going to think about all the things that I need to fix, and I'm going to think about them, and then I'm going to fix them, and then I would never do it.
It's tough to put a positive spin on this in a way that is encouraging, but each of us are fooled every day, all the time, from every which angle. And it's the easiest to be fooled by those close to you. I would lie to my parents and give them a nugget of truth that they could, or my friends or sibling could testify to. Like I'm always in feeling guilty, you know, proving myself innocent. But then you twist that truth, or the way you serve it and deliver it, where it accommodates this veneer, the facade of being well behaved, following the rules, being obedient. But I would say to trust your gut. Trust your gut. When something feels off, pray about it. Speak to your significant other, the siblings, their friends, you know. Just, it's not out of incriminating or convicting or judging them, because they feel that regardless of how you feel. I feel that from everyone. I felt that from everyone. But just put a little, and as opposed to just going right to discipline, don't do this, just why? What's really going on? We love you. And my parents did do that, but it placed them in a point of desperation. There was so much distrust, disobedience, brokenheartedness, making them feel like a failure and past the point of no return.
You know, almost dying 4 times in a night from overdoses or from smacking my head on a glass table. They talk about, you know, the desire being lifted. I never understood that until the last time I used. I felt that, and then I understood it, because really, it's just, I don't have that desire anymore. I want to change people's lives and to speak to those who have no hope and to give them that, to show them that they're enough and that they can get through whatever the hell they're getting through or going through, because, you know, if I could do it, they could.
I look back on little Kelsey and I think, wow, you bad. You took on some big, and I showed no fear. You know, I went for it, and I messed up a lot. You know, I've hurt a lot of people, but I have the gift of being alive today to make those things right. You know, I want our community to understand that as long as moms are sick, children will suffer. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're not going to have consequences for asking for help. You don't have to be an addict because that's what you are. I will not let my addiction define me. I'm going to redefine what it looks like to live with an addiction as a mom.
Frankie had 6 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, so the coroner said he was probably dead within 15 to 20 minutes. These drug dealers are making these pills with a pill press. They look very similar to a Xanax, but I found the pills in his bedroom, and they were in a plastic bag, and I barely picked the plastic bag up, and they were like crumbling. So the detectives took them, they were analyzed. But the thing is that each pill could have a different amount because those drug dealers don't measure. They just toss it in and that's it.
So the girl who was with Jackson that night, who claimed to the paramedics that he didn't take anything, is the one that told me who the drug dealer was, because she was with him at the time of the sale, and she provided me with his address. A police investigation was started and didn't go very far because the girl refused to cooperate with the police.
We are in a crisis in our county, in our state, in our nation, that there is so much drug activity and there is so much criminal activity that a drug pusher, a courier, a dealer is not looked upon by the system anymore as a potential murderer. And that's why we're losing these kids left and right.
These drug dealers, you're really going to trust where they're getting their pills from? I mean, maybe they don't even know they're selling you fentanyl, but where are they getting it from? And they don't care if the person lives or dies. They're just there to make money.
90% of this crap is cut. Majority of that 90% is fentanyl, meth, heroin. You know, anything that's not what you're looking for, it has.
Fentanyl is so prevalent out on the street. It's laced in just about every drug out there, and it is so deadly.
The opioid crisis itself has shifted in that at first people were getting addicted to the opioid itself, and that would lead them to do other drugs. So that became a problem in and of itself. And then now things have shifted so that people are starting thinking they're taking one drug and finding out it's laced with fentanyl. And so now fentanyl as an opioid is the bigger problem, but people don't even realize they're taking it, or if they do, they don't realize the amount.
And so I think the thing that we really have to focus on is education and awareness of parents and teachers and doctors and nurses and average Joes and average Janes to say, like, hey, this can happen to you. Because if we don't do that, we're going to continue to lose our young people to this terrible addiction.
I think parents ought to sit and talk with their kids when they're in the 5th grade. And I think that every parent is afraid to sit down with their kid and have that discussion with them. And there's a lot of reasons why those parents won't sit down with them. But in this day and age, parents have to realize that experimentation is going to kill their child. Today, when you experiment, you can actually play Russian roulette and you may wind up dead.
I'm never going to get over this, ever. You learn to live with it because that's the only choice that you have, but you never get over it. I do not want a parent to go through what I did when I opened up that bedroom door and I found my son dead.
The preceding program was a paid commercial which has been paid for by the advertiser whose products and or services are featured in this program.
Oh, yeah.
Fox Sunday.
I actually can't see, so I have to take these off.
Animation's greatest titans face off. It's an all-new night filled with comedy giants.
Fum. You have a face and it is dumb.
Tonight at 8 on Fox 26.